What's up, guys? I'm Erin. This is Erin Go Read. It has been a minute. Just life is crazy. Just a lot of work, really. Starting my own business and getting that running, getting systems set up and everything like that. Just always hustling. So I haven't had time for Booktube, and I haven't been reading nearly as much as I would like to. But I miss you guys, and especially I've been seeing like the Booktube #2 spin videos and a lot of like springathon things, and so I wanted to make a kind of a catch-up video and then talk about my Booktube spin choice #2. So that is Willa Cather's O Pioneers. Short little one, takes place in Nebraska, which is where Nebraska, right? Yeah, the prairies of Nebraska, which is actually where I was born, even though I have no memory of it. I was like, I think 17 days old when we moved away. My dad was in the Air Force. So never read anything by Willa Cather before. This is her first great novel. I think it's about like a young woman who basically goes and tries to like make a prospering farm on her own in the prairies of Nebraska. Okay, then I just wanted to highlight a few books that I have been reading or that I have read recently that I haven't had a chance to talk about. I've read other things, but these are just kind of the ones that stuck out. So Klara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. I love Kazuo Ishiguro. This is not my favorite of his, but I still really enjoyed it. I just feel like he just really knows how to tell a story. Like, I just feel like I'm being told a story when I'm in his books, and I really get kind of caught up in the characters and really invested in just like their situation. So Klara is an AF, an artificial friend, and we start off with her in the shop where the other AFs are sold. And so we're getting her perspective from life inside the store, and then also seeing out the store window and like the prospect of, it's almost like a child in an orphanage being waited to be adopted, but it's this artificial friend being waited to be selected to go home with a human. It actually reminded me of Corduroy, the old children's book Corduroy. Corduroy's missing a button, and the little girl, it's actually kind of similar. I don't want to give anything away, but there's kind of a similar like plot thingy just that happens. There's a little minor thing. But Klara ends up going home with a girl, and we get now their home life and kind of major obstacle that has to be overcome there. So I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I believe I was reading A Gentleman in Moscow probably the last time I did a reading vlog, and I finished it and really loved it. I think I gave it 5 stars. I just felt really, again, kind of connected to the characters and the way that we get to see, what's his name? Blanking on his name. So we have Count Rostov was part of like the old aristocracy, I guess, or nobles. He had money. He came from money. And so after the Bolshevik Revolution, he's kind of, not seen in a good light because just of the life that he lived, the connections that he had. And so he has to live the rest of his life in this hotel in Moscow. And so then we see his life as it develops from there, and the relationships he builds inside of the hotel, and then we kind of get glimpses of what's going in the outside world through his correspondence and his relationships with these other people who are free to go in and out. And it's just really like just kind of quaint and charming, and it's just like the everyday life. It's his everyday life, and interesting to see how much of a life he was still able to live, even though he is confined to this one building. And then most recently, I finished The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. I just love this so much. This was, if you want just a happy place to go to, this is where to go. It's fantasy, but it's not so far. It's not its own. It's low fantasy because it's low fantasy because it occurs in our own world, and there just happens to be these magical children, and a caseworker is sent to go. The air just turned on, so hopefully that's not going to be a bother. Anyway, this caseworker is sent to go check out this like house for magical children to kind of investigate and make sure that everything is operating well, that the children are being taken care of. And there's a couple people in particular that the higher ups, what do they call it, extreme upper management, really want him to look into. And so he starts off as this very by the book, everything. He keeps the book of rules and regulations with him at all times, and he's always reading it, and he's this very by the book person. And basically he does his part of the job to the letter, and then whatever the outcome of that is, whoever that impacts, however it impacts them, is kind of, you know, above his pay grade, and he just goes by the rules and regulations. And so we get to see how he is changed by the people he meets in the house in the Cerulean Sea, and it is amazing. 5 stars. And then I recently actually listened to the audiobook of You Are a Badass, How to Stop Doubting Your Greatness and Start Living an Awesome Life by Jen Sincero. And I ended up picking up a copy at Ruby's Books locally. Because there are just so many like underlinable things, so many things that I wanted to go back to, and so I picked up a physical copy of that. So highly recommend. This is the second one of hers I've read. The first one I read was You Were a Badass at Making Money, and I think they're like very rereadable, especially if you're in any way like an entrepreneur, someone who's just trying to like level yourself up, stop believing the false narrative in your head about where your limits are, and kind of learn to trust yourself and to get outside your comfort zone and expect more for yourself. And then finally, I'm reading Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, the first in the Thomas Cromwell trilogy. I'm not very far in this. I got kind of sidetracked by The House in the Cerulean Sea, and then that was all that I wanted to read. And then I'm also reading the first in the Mitford series by Karon. So I'm just very slowly kind of taking this one. And I think probably why it's feeling a little bit slow right now is because I have read the beginning of a biography on Thomas Cromwell, and it's kind of taking place around the same period that the story is. Like the where I got to in that biography is kind of where we are in this book. So he's not yet like in at court, but it is still really interesting, and I really hope to be able actually to dig into this more over the next coming weeks. And then the Karon one, the Mitford book that I'm reading, whatever it's called, I can't remember, but we follow Father Tim, and he lives in a small town of Mitford, and I keep thinking it's way older than it is, but it's only written in the 90s, and I assume that's kind of like the time period that it actually takes place in, but it has a very kind of Mayberry feel to it, very old-timey feel to it, and it's just Father Tim is an Episcopal priest, and it's his interactions and everything within the small town, the workings of the church, the things that he gets kind of pulled into. It starts with this like enormous dog, just like won't leave him alone, and then he just kind of like takes his dog home. Barnabas, this gigantic dog who is never clean despite how many times he washes him. He kind of gets involved with this little boy Dooley, the grandson of, I think he's like the church grounds caretaker. So yeah, it's just like, it's like a charming, quaint, sweet book. A little bit funny, but just really a really nice place to be, especially after just like a long day of like thinking all the time. I think that's in part why I really got into The House in the Cerulean Sea, and now into this first Mitford book, because it's just like, it's really just like casual and easygoing, whereas with Wolf Hall, it's just a lot more cerebral, and my brain is tired of being cerebral. So we'll see how all that ends up going. These are the books that I am reading or I have read recently. I'd love to know if you're doing the Booktube Spin, and what book did you end up getting? Thank you for watching. See you around the tubes.